Have you ever heard someone joke that they would literally burst into flames just by walking into a certain church? That is exactly what Amy Duggar's husband, Dillon King, said about her famous relative's place of worship. In a candid interview, he claimed his shoes would melt the second he stepped inside the ultra-strict church connected to the Duggar family. Amy laughed it off and called him a liar, but the moment opened a much bigger conversation about faith, freedom, and the sharp differences between their everyday Christian life and the rigid rules her cousins grew up under. Stick around, because this update reveals far more than a simple punchline. It shows how one branch of the Duggar family has chosen a completely different path. The Duggar family first captured national attention in the mid-2000s through their TLC reality series 19 Kids and Counting. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar raised their 19 children under an extremely conservative Christian lifestyle heavily influenced by the Institute in Basic Life Principles. Viewers watched the large family practice strict modesty standards, limit modern music and dancing, and follow courtship rules that delayed physical affection until marriage. The show later became Counting On and continued to draw millions of viewers until major scandals forced its cancellation. Amy Duggar, Jim Bob's niece and the daughter of his sister Deanna, appeared regularly on the series as the more free-spirited cousin. She never lived under the same intensity of rules that shaped her 19 cousins. While they followed detailed guidelines about clothing, entertainment, and dating, Amy grew up listening to rock music, wearing swimsuits, and dating more openly. She often adjusted her behavior when visiting her relatives out of respect, covering her shoulders and knees even when she did not fully understand the reasons behind those expectations. That contrast sets the stage for the comments her husband made years later. After stepping away from the spotlight and building their own family, Amy and Dillon have spoken more openly about the differences that once made them outsiders within the larger Duggar circle. Their recent remarks highlight how those differences still define their relationship to the family's religious traditions. In late 2022, Amy and Dillon sat down for an exclusive interview with the U.S. Sun and discussed the religious environment surrounding Jim Bob and Michelle. Dillon, who had never attended the family's church, made his feelings clear with a humorous but pointed remark. He said he had never been there and probably never would. According to him, he would likely catch on fire the moment he walked in because of how they do things, and his shoes would melt. Amy immediately laughed and called him a liar, lightening the moment while still acknowledging the real gap between their beliefs. She explained that their own church is more non-denominational. In their view, it is perfectly acceptable to have a beer and still love Jesus. Amy went further, saying she truly believes Jesus would have a beer with them. Dillon backed her up by referencing the biblical story of Jesus turning water into wine at a wedding. Amy recalled how her relatives used to respond to that story. They claimed it was a different kind of wine back then, and when she asked why people appeared drunk, they insisted the wine was not fermented. She found that explanation hard to accept. These comments were not made in isolation. They reflected years of observation. Amy described growing up in a much more relaxed household than her cousins. She enjoyed rock music, wore regular swimsuits, and kissed boys. Yet whenever she visited the Duggar home, she deliberately toned down her style. She avoided showing her shoulders or knees and tried to respect their rules even though she did not understand them. She later admitted that for a long time she avoided asking questions because she did not want to ruffle feathers. Now in her 30s, she said she no longer cares about maintaining that careful balance. Dillon was even more direct. He imitated what he saw as the family's approach by saying people were told they do not get a mind of their own and must simply do as they are told. He called that mindset crazy and said he was only describing it as he saw it. The conversation also touched on how deeply the rules were ingrained. Amy estimated that at least half of her cousins still follow the same strict guidelines they were taught from a young age. Children were raised to love and respect their parents without questioning authority. That pattern, she suggested, made it difficult for many of them to step outside the system even as adults. Meanwhile, Amy and Dillon have built a life that includes casual freedoms their relatives once frowned upon. Their willingness to speak publicly about those differences marked a clear shift from the earlier years when Amy tried hard to fit in during filming. The interview arrived after the family had already weathered major public controversies, including the cancellation of their long-running show and legal troubles involving Josh Duggar. Against that backdrop, Dillon's joke and Amy's explanations painted a picture of two people who had chosen distance and a more flexible expression of faith. They did not claim superiority. They simply described the version of Christianity that felt authentic to them. By sharing the comments so openly, they invited viewers to consider how different families can interpret the same faith in dramatically different ways. The moment also underscored Amy's evolution from the crazy cousin label she once carried on television to someone comfortable defining her own boundaries. Public reaction to the interview mixed amusement with deeper reflection. Many fans of the original series found Dillon's fire joke entertaining and shared it widely on social media. Some appreciated the couple's honesty about living a less restrictive Christian life. Others who still support the core Duggar values saw the remarks as unnecessarily critical or irreverent. Media outlets largely treated the story as another chapter in the ongoing narrative of family members stepping away from the strictest traditions. Commentators noted that Amy had long occupied a middle ground, close enough to appear on the show yet different enough to stand out. Her willingness to discuss alcohol, music, and personal freedom without apology resonated with viewers who had questioned the intensity of the family's earlier rules. At the same time, some longtime supporters argued that the Duggars' approach simply reflected sincere convictions rather than control. The conversation stayed relatively measured compared with more explosive family scandals. Most responses focused on the contrast in lifestyles rather than personal attacks. Social media users who had followed Amy's journey often expressed support for her decision to raise her own child with greater openness. Overall, the public discussion highlighted how reality television had turned private family differences into shared cultural talking points, leaving room for both laughter at the joke and serious thought about religious freedom within families. Looking ahead, Amy and Dillon have continued building their lives outside the intense public glare that once surrounded the larger Duggar clan. They have focused on their marriage and parenting while occasionally sharing updates that reinforce their independent path. No major new announcements about church attendance or formal family reunions have been reported in connection with these particular comments. Viewers interested in future developments can watch for any additional interviews or personal statements the couple may choose to make. Their past willingness to speak candidly suggests they will keep defining their faith and family life on their own terms. Dillon King's light-hearted claim that he would catch on fire inside the Duggar family's strict church captured a much larger truth. The joke, paired with Amy's calm explanation of their non-denominational beliefs and their comfort with everyday freedoms, illustrated the distance that has grown between one branch of the family and the rigid traditions that once defined the entire group. From the early days of 19 Kids and counting through years of personal reflection, Amy has moved from careful respect for her relatives' rules to open ownership of a different way of living out her faith. Dillon's unfiltered style only made that contrast clearer. Together they showed that it is possible to remain connected by blood yet choose an entirely different path. Their comments remind us that faith communities, even within the same extended family, can look very different depending on individual conviction and experience. What are your thoughts on this latest Duggar family update? Share your opinion in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another Duggar family update.